Well, hello, and welcome to the Reverent Inquiry Podcast, Episode 1. My name is Micah.
I'm Conrad.
And we are going to be your hosts / co-hosts. We'll occasionally have some other guest speakers on here, hopefully, some friends of ours and interested parties that will be doing interviews with us. But for now, it's just us. This is just kind of an intro to give you an idea of the scope of the podcast, the name, how we chose it, a little bit about who we are and what we're going to be doing with this project. So, the name Reverent Inquiry has a somewhat specific meaning, which I will let Conrad explain a little bit further, seeing as it was pretty much his idea, which turned out pretty well. So let's see.
We came up with this name because we wanted to create a platform where we could discuss controversial topics about religion and politics and other things that society has trouble discussing in a respectful way. And Mike and I are best friends and have been friends for like 10 years now.
Yeah, something like that.
So of course, over the years we've had different views on politics and religion, but we've kind of learned to discuss these in a respectful way. And recently I was talking with him and was telling him that I found it really interesting the way that we were able to have highly differing worldviews and political views, but we didn't ever let it affect our friendship, and it was something that we were able to just discuss freely and learn more about the differing worldviews and our own worldviews through that.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say the same thing. It's been great because we've both gone through some changes, especially more recently. There's been some tumultuousness in terms of our, both of us really, kind of how we think about things. But it's been nice throughout all of it, being able to talk to each other about it and discuss things. Because not only does society not discuss these things, it's when they are discussed, we've realized they're a lot of times discussed improperly, either disrespectfully, as Conrad mentioned, or just the worldviews being presented or not even being presented in their strongest form. So it just seems to me, looking around, we just have an army of straw men to deal with in the world, and it's never a good thing for open and honest inquiry. So we'll give a little bit more on the idea and scope of the podcast. But first, we'll just mention, as he said, we've been best friends for a while now and known each other for almost a decade, or about a decade, so it's pretty insane. But yeah, so we are, our worldviews do differ kind of fundamentally on a couple things, especially as of recently, but there's actually quite a bit we agree on, quite a bit we disagree on. So that's kind of part of the scope of the podcast too, is giving different perspectives, but being able to kind of agree on a pursuit of truth at least. So I guess I'll just start giving a little bit of background. I'm not going to go super deep into my conversions, deconversions, and various modes of which I've changed belief, but just to give a very brief sketch, I was raised in a predominantly fundamentalist, evangelical, Protestant wing of Christianity, Southern Baptist, Reformed, and so on and so forth. Kind of gone through some tumult with that. I ended up questioning a lot of the views of my original church while maintaining a Christian faith. More recently, within less than a year, I've kind of shifted to the secular side after kind of losing some confidence in the Christian worldview in general. So, and then researching more philosophy, have bolstered kind of my worldview with arguments. And as of now, the picture I have is what I think best fits reality, but still very much evolving and growing. So as of now, I would be somewhat comfortable with calling myself an atheist, although not having any profound confidence in that worldview, but enough to take that label. Also kind of specify I'm a naturalist, so I believe there are natural reality exhausts all possible reality. So while I do think all religious claims are false, I have a lot of respect for the more intellectually refined ones, some more than others specifically, which we'll get into in future episodes. But hopefully I won't go on any longer, but just to give you a very broad overview, that's kind of where I'm at as of now. So Conrad, to you, I guess.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that Micah said apply to me. I was raised in a Christian family as well, predominantly, fundamentalist views. I went to a pretty fundamentalist church. And that's part of the way that Mike and I met. We went to a Christian school together.
Yeah, so for all its flaws, we are at least grateful for that.
Yeah. So I went through a lot of questioning recently with my faith, and I'm actually really thankful for it. But I still remain a Christian. But a lot of people may not consider me a Christian because I have some pretty drastic views that contradict a lot of mainstream Christianity. And I generally don't share these with people because, again, as we discussed earlier, society has a hard time discussing topics that contradict their view and their view of reality and just their worldview in general. But yeah, I'm still a Christian. I would say that I'm non-denominational. I think denominations are pretty contradictory to a lot of scripture, and I would say that my views most align with the Orthodox Christian views, and I think that there is a way that Christianity can accurately describe reality. However, I think that fundamentalist Christianity cannot accurately describe reality in a intellectual way, and I can see how many people would completely throw Christianity out with the bathwater because it has many flaws and many issues, and it pushes a lot of people away, and it's done some pretty horrible things throughout history. So I'm still a Christian, but I see a lot of the issues with it, but I also see a lot of the beauty with it as well, and a lot of the amazing things that it can add to one's life. So that's my worldview. I, of course, didn't really go into too much of the doctrines that I believe necessarily.
We'll probably get into those a little bit more
right.
in the future, because we also want to make it clear a couple things. Are you good with your thing there?
No, yeah.
Okay. So just to make sure because for listeners, make sure we're all defining fundamentalism the same way, because the word fundamentalism applied to a religion can be different from the actual definition of, say, religious fundamentalism. So we've discussed this a little bit too. More of a historical movement, more recent actually. Because we also like to talk about how we don't want to ally ourselves with some of the more roots and primitive manifestations of our worldviews. So like I would not want to align myself, for example, with most of what the new atheists say in terms of their attacks on religion or attacks on largely the fundamentalist Christianity we're talking about. And so that would be religious fundamentalism. Christian fundamentalism specifically is more of a late 19th, earliest 20th century movement that was kind of a reactionary movement to some theologically liberal things that were happening within Christianity at that time. So it's kind of characterized, I'm not going to give a great definition here off the top of my head, but it's broadly characterized by adherence to the absolute authority of a sacred text, exemplifying the teachings of a prophet or God, and and usually interpreting such a text as being a historically literal document as opposed to an allegorical spiritual document. So do you have anything to add to that definition?
No, yeah, that's sounds good to me.
Okay, good, because attacks upon such a literalist reading are not fair criticisms of Christianity, because Christianity through most of its history has not read Scripture that way. It was mostly read, as I said, as spiritual allegory. So we just want to kind of be clear and draw a line in the sand. At least I do, and I know Conrad does too, in terms of not aligning ourselves with the more primitive versions of worldviews, because any worldview has fundamentalist adherence.
Right.
And that's not the strongest position to take, so it kind of is a waste of time attacking that if you're seeking to attack. But I think it's a necessary social tool to have people that do criticize the fundamentalist wings on both sides, because it forces, we talked about this a little bit, and we're going to go more into this in the next episode, but it forces beliefs to return to an intellectual tradition, which is very helpful for discussion. So that's an important distinction to make. Anything to add there? What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that totally, and I would say that that's again another issue with society, and another reason for creating this podcast is because whenever you declare your worldview, people instantly look at the negative connotations to that worldview, and I have a problem with doing it with certain people or certain views on politics and things. But anywhere there's a group of people, there's going to be stupid ideas aligned with it.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of intellectual thought, and there's a lot of good things within a lot of views that you can find. So it's important to be able to look at something respectfully, rather than just immediately, as soon as you hear that one word, having something triggered in your brain where you just immediately throw it out and close your mind. It's important to be open-minded towards worldviews that might at first seem to not be true or to contradict yours.
Yeah, like what you said, with you don't want to throw Christianity out with the bathwaters because, you were raised in a church that had a pretty primitive reading of Scripture or something of the like, because that happens a lot too, and it's, in a way, it's unfortunate because you would never want somebody to, leave one fundamentalist belief for another one, because that's what you see happening too, as people trade one dogma. David Bentley Hart used this language, and I really love it, where he says, trading one dogmatism for another. So trading fundamentalist religion for, say, fundamentalist materialism is nothing gained there, nothing. So that's the unfortunate thing about it too, is even if you get people out of one fundamentalist belief, they almost always go to one that's equivalently intellectually bankrupt, and sometimes morally bankrupt as well. So so that's kind of the big distinction you want to make. But we're going to go a lot more into detail on that in future episodes, and it'll be kind of a recurring issue because, unfortunately, fundamentalist Christianity, especially, and fundamentalist views in general, are the more prominent views. So while we don't want to waste too much time, you want to argue against the strongest manifestations of a belief, but unfortunately, because of the time and place we live in America and the West especially, there's just a rampant resurgence in these views. So we'll be talking about that quite a bit. We have a wide range of critiques, historically, morally, philosophically. But yeah, so I don't know if you had anything else there.
No.
Because, we're just going to, so what were you going to say?
Something we wanted to distinguish was that, if you haven't already noticed through me, is we're in no way, professionals when it comes to this. And I'm personally very uneducated about a lot of philosophical views and doctrines. I've kind of just recently gotten into the intellectual side of this stuff. And so we're not trying to come off as professionals or acting like we know a lot or that we have the answer, that we've unlocked some truth. Rather, again,
Gnostic view of it.
Rather, again, we're just trying to discuss it respectfully and try to at least locate some kind of truth. We kind of wanted to make that known if it isn't already clear.
I'm sure everybody could tell. But we're not ivory tower academics. And we find these topics interesting though. And again, as we mentioned earlier, we're able to discuss things together in a way that we're not really able to discuss with most people, and most people aren't discussing with each other anyway. So we're able to kind of have conversations about things. So it's kind of actually the point of the podcast, is we're not these ivory tower academics. We're just regular guys who are able to discuss these things, are interested in researching them on our own time a lot, and are just able to have good conversations and hopefully just bring kind of it's more about a method, I would say, like just a more respectful and honest method of inquiry, as opposed to like us giving the answers. So so that's the important thing too, is that's what I'd say. So I guess topics discussed, I don't know if you want to go into any of these, but just philosophy in general, religion, religious beliefs if you couldn't already tell, politics, modern current events, cultural commentary, current event commentary, political sciences, kind of ethical questions will be good. Got some of those we'll dig into. Planning on doing, I think, some book discussions and reviews of books, I guess, kind of read some things together and then be able to discuss them on air. So that's just a little bit. Do you have anything to add there? Did I get it all?
Just basically topics that are centered around controversy. I mean, not everything. If we do book discussions and things, there might not be much controversy there, but politics and religion, of course, is just littered with controversy everywhere you look.
I guess that's most of it. So, is that everything before the lining out the next episode. I think that's the last thing. I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So do you want to go for the next episode? Kind of briefly outline it.
Yeah. So the next episode, which should be up by next week, right?
Yep. Hopefully, that's the goal.
It's going to be called "The Beauty and Crisis of Christianity." So, as we stated earlier, we're both raised Christians, and even Micah, who doesn't adhere to the faith anymore, he, from talking to him, he still acknowledges certain, miraculous or compelling things about that.
Right, that's fair.
Intellectual beliefs centered around that. And of course I do as well. And so we both wanted to talk about the beauty of Christianity, even if you don't necessarily adhere to the faith of it, because it's done some pretty great things, and it's also done some pretty horrible things, and thus the name, The Beauty and Crisis of Christianity.
Right.
We wanted to discuss some of the horrible intellectual side of it, and some of the horrible
lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the crisis of modern Christianity as well. Will be a big topic. We've outlined it a little bit here, but yeah. Right. So I guess that's the next episode. So it should be up next week, and that'll be probably a little longer, a little more in depth, a little more history and arguments behind it. But yeah, this is just kind of an introduction to meet us and hear a little bit about what we're going to be doing with this podcast and why we're doing it. And you got any concluding remarks? Or?
Be respectful.
That's a good one. Good way to end it. But yeah, so thank you for listening, and look out. We'll be coming with some more of these hopefully in the near future, and see how it goes.